Welcome to The Interzone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman here with my co-host, Chris, the guy who loves partners, McNulty. The guy who really likes partners?
No, I love our partners. Sometimes I never know where you're going with these things, Mark. But it is true. At Microsoft, our mission is to deliver solutions to help individuals and organizations achieve more. We know we can't do it alone. Each month, we sit down with one of our partners who delivers solutions and services to help our customers achieve more with Microsoft.
On this episode of our new partner series on the Interzone, we're talking with Zoe Wilson, who's a modern teamwork practice lead, Luke Evans, who is an Office 365 and SharePoint architect, and Ruben Hugo, Office 365 solution architect, a ton of great minds from a company called Agilisys from the UK, London.
It's been great getting to know Agilisys over the past year. They applied to join our Content Services Partner Program a while back. And my first face-to-face meeting with them, apart from all the online interactions, I sat down with them at the Gartner Digital Workplace Conference in London in September. They're a neat bunch of folks. They, like many of our partners who work in this space, they help organizations implement, migrate to, get started with using Microsoft 365 left to right. But they have a particular focus on public sector within the UK. So they work with everything from the City of London all the way on down to local town councils and everything in between. And so they really focus more than we've seen other organizations do on all the compliance and security needs. The UK is in an interesting posture. Unlike the US, all of the government organizations run through the same set of cloud services that commercial organizations use. So in the US, the government clouds, as we talked about earlier on the show, they usually lag 3 to 12 months behind on commercial release because of additional certifications. And so they have a little bit more time to prepare for change management. The challenge within the UK that Agilisys, is one of the many things they address is when we light something up for commercial customers, everyone in the UK government organizations, they get it at the same time. So a lot of the long lead time, which gives you a little bit more compliance elbow room to get ready for things, doesn't exist there. The benefit is faster time to market. The downside is faster time to market.
Well, I wonder when we talk with them, I think we'll hear a little bit about the specific requests that they were getting from the City of London. And I wonder if any part of that is them or the whole of their, the customers that they focus on, if there is that resistance or has been the resistance to move to the cloud, or if there's any of that naysay of, I want to go at a certain pace, or if it's just different, since they are on a different train and certainly they take a different approach, that might just be fine with them as long as it meets the requirements at the base level no matter what.
They're going to have to be on a different train because I just got an email. Virgin Trains is shutting down its operations in the UK.
Oh, no.
I was on there about a month ago. Agilisys is really excited about Project Cortex, and some of the advantages of being outside of a sovereign cloud in a commercial cloud is it means that we're going to be able to help them and help their customers get started earlier. They have nominated customers to come into our preview program. And when I sat down with them on the banks of the Thames, literally.
That's great.
They were super excited about what we're now calling Project Cortex and spent some time walking through it. They proposed some customers, and they're in a good posture. But I know that, our audience may be asking, how can they get more engaged like that?
Yeah, so maybe through the lens of what you're hearing from partners, there is, of course, the private preview that you've opened up, but you're also just starting conversations of what do people want to do with Project Cortex. And this being a partner episode and conversations with Agilisys and other partners in your program, what are you hearing them say, here's what we like about Project Cortex, here's what we want to do with it for our customers?
Well, the first thing they want is they want it right now.
Right now.
What they don't like is that they don't have it right now.
Can you do something about that, Chris?
We can, but we can't go as quickly as they all would like. We need to take a fairly measured approach in that this is not a commercially released solution yet. So there is no formal support. So the way that we support it is through engineering and development resources who already have day jobs. So we are scaling out our preview program as quickly as we can, but we want to make sure that it's a complex piece of software. And if you go and search for it on Bing, you will find an growing number of blog posts and articles about it, but there's no support documentation out there yet. We want people to have a good first-time experience, so we want to make sure that we're comfortable supporting the customers and partners that we already have in preview before we expand it further.
So it's on everybody's Christmas list. And hopefully everybody's been nice, and maybe there's some naughty folks that won't get Project Cortex quite as soon as everybody else. But beyond that they want it, what are they saying? As much as they know about it already, what are they saying? Here's what we're going to be able to do for our customers once we have Project Cortex and are able to do X or Y for customer X or Y.
Well, the funny thing is, especially when we think about systems integrators, consulting practices like Agilisys, and many companies much larger than that. What they really want to do is they want to start using it not just to understand it for customer solutions, but for themselves, because they have people who are knowledge workers, who are going and bouncing amongst dozens of projects a year themselves. And how do they make sure when they add someone to a new project, they get up to speed quickly? So they have, as customers, exactly the same need that the rest of our customer base has. So professional services is definitely a target audience for us, and it maps very well to the knowledge principles of Project Cortex. So that is one thing that we're hearing across the board from partners. The second thing that we're hearing is based on the Cortex announcements, we have had hundreds of partner organizations contact us to say, I'd like to join the partner program. And if you are out there and you haven't already applied, don't worry. If you go to aka.ms/Project Cortex, there's a response form in the Resource Center. And if you're a partner, you can say, I want more information about the partner program. Later on in December, we'll be sending out a request for some more information to everyone who asked to join so we can figure out, based on our criteria, if we can get them into the program. One of the benefits of the program is we will be opening up early next year some private workshops on how to customize and extend the services of Microsoft Graph, of Microsoft Search, and of Project Cortex. And so that is something that they're also very eager to get into. So from a customer perspective, if you are working with a partner who is in our program, know that they do have great access or good access, whether I'm answering my email that
Good
day.
to great, I think, is the pattern.
To work with us on what our roadmap is and to get their questions answered. We know that there's a lot of interest. We want to make sure that we can satisfy as many people as we can.
Great. Well, I have one prediction, and then we'll move into our interview with Agilisys. My prediction is the persona that we always call knowledge workers will soon become Cortex workers. Do you think this will happen?
I do not think this will happen. I will pay you $1 American if Gartner rebrands this category as Cortex workers.
Okay, well.
Anyone who knows me, I never bet more than $1. Anything.
That is true.
That is my max bet.
Okay. I'm going to take that bet, and I'll match you $1 if it doesn't happen by December 31st, 2020.
There we go.
All right. So today on the Interzone, Partner Edition, we talk with Agilisys. You'll hear from Zoe Wilson, Luke Evans, Ruben Hugo, from the depths of business to technology and architecture. Here we go.
So up next on the Interzone Partner Edition, we sit down or stand up with Agilisys, one of our favorite partners, and we're very happy to welcome Zoe, Luke, and Ruben here to the Interzone.
Zoe, if we can start with you, can you give us a little sense of what your role is with Agilisys and some of the things that you're doing with your customers, just briefly?
Hi there, Mark. Hi there, Chris. Of course. So my name's Zoe. I've been at Agilisys for 2.5 years now, and I'm the practice lead for the collaboration and content tower, which looks after all what I like to call all of the fun stuff within Office 365. So we help customers with everything related to SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, Power Platform, and a few other cool bits as well.
Nice. And alongside you, Luke and Ruben, starting with Luke, what's your role at Agilisys and some of the day-to-day that you focus on?
Cool. Wonderful. So my name's Luke Evans. I'm a technical architect at Agilisys. What would I say? At the end of the day, I'm really just a techie. It's kind of putting it as simply as that. I think the key things that I help out with really are helping to basically implement and roll out the new technology for our customers, as well as kind of helping them understand what's coming down the pipeline and kind of how they best use that. So a lot of the thing, what I would say is it's kind of changed recently over the past couple of years with cloud computing coming in. and how we approach that and how do we work with customers, certainly from a consulting standpoint. And that's kind of a bit about what I do.
And Ruben, it would be great to get a sense of kind of your journey with technology, how it's, where you started and how it's brought you to Agilisys today.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, this is Ruben Hugo. I'm with Agilisys as a solution architect, and I'm working with a number of local government clients. My background is with a lot of Microsoft tech going back 20 years or so. So I've come all the way from Windows 3.11, I think it was called one back then, upon a time, and I've seen the whole progress. And my main sort of work these days is really with helping to transform the way the clients work to use all the features of Office 365. So helping them to work on information architecture and change the structures that they're using to map to their organizational structures. And I actually focus heavily on classification as well.
Oh, yes. Good old Windows for Workgroups. If only we had known to call it
one, yeah.
If we had just known to call it Windows for Teams back then, we could have saved 20 years.
That's a lot of naming costs that we could have saved.
Yes.
Well, this first question is really to the three of you. I think for one of you to answer, but in the context of the entire company. When you think of, I heard some buzzwords in there, transformation, I heard the focus of change management, taking your customers from where they are and where they're going. What is the main focus for Agilisys to work with the Microsoft 365 technology, your own innovation and services? Where does that put Agilisys in this center of gravity?
So Agilisys have worked with public sector in the UK for about 20 years now. And within the company, it's our ambition to be the primary supplier of professional and managed services into public sector. We feel like we've got a lot of really good, deep knowledge of these verticals and of how they work and the challenges that they face. And we really pride ourselves on being able to help them transform both the technology, and how they work as a business. So we do a lot of strategic advisory and public sector reform work with them as well.
I have a specific question. We had an episode a little while back that focused on government. And in that public sector, they have some unique assets that they get. There's a special version of Microsoft 365 for government. In your context, and maybe the government customers that you work with, what are those unique things where if the balance is what they get out of the box and then the value that you add, services, where is that line that when a customer thinks, I can use this right out of the box, or I need Agilisys to help me build or adapt to something? What are some of those things that they're actually wanting to accomplish?
So if we take local authority as an example, over the last few years, we've worked with several local authority customers and helped them move wholesale from, the traditional kind of on-premise legacy environments. And really for, with the challenges that local authorities face in terms of, being budget constrained and being able to afford people who've got that right expertise, when you're looking at something as complex as a full business transformation and a move to Microsoft 365, and you factor in things like, network upgrades and move from Windows 7 to Windows 10 and Active Directory cleanup and file share migrations and legacy SharePoint. And, there's so much complexity in this that quite often what we see is that people just don't know where to start with it. So we typically see that there's a lot of thinking and a lot of help that they need to get from A to B. And quite often they do turn to trusted partners like us to help them do that.
It's interesting. I'd love to get everyone's take on this. Around the world, Microsoft frequently delivers our M365 services through what we call sovereign clouds. In the United States, GCC. We have clouds in Germany, China, Australia, and the rest. And in the UK, there actually isn't a government cloud. So the government organizations, whether it's the local borough all the way on up to the ministries, they're all being served in the commercial tenant. What's it like delivering, that highly compliant level of service through commercial tenancies? What are some of the things that you've observed that might be different working out of the UK with that?
Luke here. So what I was going to say on this one is it's an interesting mix is the thing. So we certainly don't have any of the government clouds here, but we do work with a number of, certainly I'm working on quite a big project at the moment with a police force in the UK. And the key thing we find is probably the governance levels and the constraints we want to build on top of M365. And it's kind of helping to, I would say, help aid to them to better understand kind of how to control M365 and the various facets, and also helping to automate that is where we can step in and really help them out is what I would say. So the basically, you've got all this great functionality, but when you're dealing with, highly constrained environments or more, what would I say, regulatory issues. It's more about how do I better control the platform and how can I guess, better govern and kind of maintain visibility of what I'm sharing with who and how I'm sharing it, probably. Those are some of the key ones that I come across.
I know one of the comments that we get, certainly in the healthcare industry and with government or anybody that requires that level of compliance, if they don't meet the need or they can't maybe directly access some of the sovereign offerings that we have, it doesn't mean that the rest of Microsoft 365 isn't compliant or malleable in a way that people can adjust it to their governance needs or their security requirements. And from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, is that you are able to adapt to what the customers require because Microsoft 365, even in a non-sovereign cloud, is not open in crazy town, but it is something where that they can put their trusted information, even their outreach to their civil constituents. Are there any areas that you see where they are turning on unique features or leveraging unique capabilities to further that compliance? If there are any, specific security enablers that you see that we offer that maybe aren't on by default or aren't used heavily by certain industries, but with the customers that you focus on, they do take advantage of?
Well, it's not so much regulatory, but certainly a security one. And I'm sure Ruben can chime in after me about regulatory because he does a lot of in terms of classification. But the one that I see a lot of customers taking great advantage of, and I guess it's a wider M365 thing, is conditional access is a big one for us in terms of it's not something that's switched on out of the box, but they can basically go to town with it really and help basically better control who has access to their data and how they access it and where from. So they really like that one is the one. And typically that's another one we talk about. The other one I certainly have been involved in recently is sensitivity labels is another one that they really like. And that, again, is not something that's out of the box, but they like building the custom sensitive info types to better classify their documents and kind of get to that granular level of kind of protecting at a document by document level is some of the cool areas that I've certainly been involved with.
I can certainly also add to that several of them, sort of these customers, that they actually also like the auto-labeling functionality and would like to really leverage that. But their biggest problem is that they don't usually have an auto-classification solution for their content type. So, and that's a massive undertaking for them to manually deal with. So most of them are looking for an auto-classification solution for content types.
So how have you solved that problem? That's something that we're starting to address through Project Cortex, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But what's been the approach? I mean, understanding a lot of the borough councils have some needs that I think map very well to some, smaller businesses too. They want to be at the front edge of technology, but they have some resource constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. So the scale of this is vast. So, that most of these local councils, they have in excess of 5 million documents. In fact, they actually tend to create 2 million new documents every year. So they don't really have the resources to properly classify that manually. So we've been looking at various third-party solutions that get sort of halfway there or get some way there to providing auto-classification. But to be quite honest, what I've seen of Project Cortex, I think that is going to be the holy grail they've been looking for, because it goes all the way through and actually tries to extract the content type fields as well as the identifying content types. So most of the clients are basically looking for something like Cortex, and they're very excited.
Well, I think you've given us the great segue that I know Chris was waiting for, and I'm just going to bridge it. Instead of Chris going on and on about Project Cortex and what it is to define it.
Because no one needs to hear that again.
Yeah, we have him on record from Ignite. We would love to hear from your eyes. You called it the Holy Grail, which I'm going to put in to Chris's hat for possibly the name of Project Cortex when we give it a proper name. But if we think of the Holy Grail as you've defined it, how would you talk about Project Cortex with your customers today, knowing what you know?
Right. So the main thing is that the starting point is the auto classification. So for us, that would be like phase one is auto classification. And then phase two is the knowledge management, which they're also very excited about. But they kind of first have to get past the auto classification. They need to get that done and dusted. And what they're all looking to do is, they've all our clients are entirely capable of specifying for a particular type of content, like an invoice or, let's say, an insurance claim document. For these various types of documents, it's fairly easy for them to specify, we would like, 10 years retention on this document, and this is the sensitivity level or the label for that. We can easily specify that. We can basically create a spreadsheet where we can say, these content types need this kind of compliance. And if they can then implement a solution or get a partner to implement a solution for them, which will actually identify all those content types for them. Then they can also get all the compliance automatically applied as well. So that's really what they're all looking for. They would like to take all these millions of content items they've got, all these documents. They'd like to get them all up into Office 365, and then they'd like to know what it all is, because they don't really know what all their data is. They've got, up to 20 years of legacy content that they don't know if they need to keep it or not. They don't know what exactly it is, but they need to find out before they throw it away. So I think Project Cortex has come at a perfect time for many of them. That's exactly what they need.
So I typically talk to, a lot of kind of executives and senior leaders within our customers. And I've also had the task over the last few weeks of actually, selling Project Cortex to the rest of my colleagues as well, and towards the senior leaders within Agilisys. And the way that I've described it to them, which has resonated really well actually, is that Project Cortex will do for content and knowledge what Microsoft Teams has done for collaboration. And when I explain it to them like that, they get the impact that this has, that it's got the potential to deliver to our customers.
I would also say, to add to this, I think to add to Ruben's point, a lot of the work that we do with our customers is first getting them into M365. They have, years and years worth of content, and we're talking anywhere between, 12 million files to, I've seen up to, I think, 60 million files, and it's like 75 terabytes worth of content. And a lot of them have a drive, we're using M365. We love the feature set. How do we get our additional content in? How do we realize more cost savings and move that content in there? And I think this is really going to help kind of accelerate that conversation and what we can do with the content once it's in there. So I think it's come at an ideal time, because we have a number of customers that we're helping move, file shares and legacy data into SharePoint, and what's the best way to kind of achieve that. And also, how do we realize the value in that content, or whether, it might fall foul of regulatory compliance issues.
One of the main things I'm hearing you talk about Project Cortex is how you're going to help your customers, use it, take advantage of it. And I think as part of the inference of the way I've heard you describe where they've come from and the amount of content that they've had, I know one of the main crossover points that we're pleased to hear people talk about a little bit differently is when you talk about millions of documents, millions of files, you talk about the size of amount of files, in the terabytes that people have, that's no longer a blocker. And certainly we've not thought of it as a blocker as well from a technical perspective. Bring all your content in. We have methods to get there. We have space and ways to give you, certainly places to put it as far as organization. But if you think of that journey from what I'm guessing started as paper-based, and then, digitizing and getting into a system that at least makes it easier to find and search for and apply some rules, but then moving into the auto classification, is there anything unique or services that you think that you will build on top of Cortex that will help you further extend and make it unique for your customers? I'm asking also the question, outside of Project Cortex, I know you as a services offering, writing custom code or doing some custom processes, or at least leveraging the tools to do things in a custom way for your customers. Has that also evolved based on what they need or are asking for in how you deliver on top of now Project Cortex, but really on top of Office 365, that extra layer of extensibility?
I mean, I'm happy to shoot on the automated processes and basically that sort of stuff. I think I can also see where the value proposition comes from Cortex as well. So let me just shoot if that's okay. I think first and foremost, what we found in terms of, where we sit and how do we help customers and build that extensibility on top of M365 is typically, from my perspective, automation. You offer them great collaborative tools. You offer them the ability to stand up this stuff. They want to share with external parties. They want to do all this sort of stuff. They want to have guest access in Teams, but they want to do it in a safe and controlled manner as well. And they basically, I guess, don't want the admin headache of basically doing all the configuration work. So that's kind of where we can add that value in and basically automate these things. So we automate, Teams provisioning, automate, Teams templates, automate SharePoint templates, automate external sharing. There's a whole bag of things there that we can do. And I think we also look to automate a lot of the stuff in terms of analyzing that content before it goes in. So how to better understand it. I think that's where Project Cortex can come in. And I think the other things that I would also call out, certainly for the things that we do on top, are things typically with new starters and leavers. So that's another interesting one that we've added to our arsenal, I would call it. I think typically, we've got people are less concerned with, having a physical desk. They're more concerned with getting access to their apps and services. How can I do the tools to better do my job? And, we're in a utility-based world now. So, when you're consuming something, you're immediately, paying for that. So another thing that we built to automate on top of that is really, how can I provision a user? How can I get them spun up in Office 365? How can I get them the correct license set, mailbox, OneDrive provision, content ready to go, and added to the correct Microsoft Teams and ready to go. So that's another kind of one. But the one I'll probably lead to on Cortex, and the one I see the value add, and it's something that we're doing at this day, and this is probably where I defer to Ruben, because he's more the taxonomy man. But I can see a whole taxonomy element coming in with Cortex and how we better kind of build a taxonomy for that customer. And I think that's where we can certainly add value, is what I would say. So I would probably, I think that's where we sit on that one. So you guys have the platform, you bring the knowledge, you bring, the auto classification, but it's that taxonomy that's kind of bespoke probably to each customer. Now, there may be some shared instances between local authorities, government forces, that sort of thing.
I want to hold you there, but I want to talk a little bit about your engagement with Microsoft. So one thing, we're really proud to be able to say that Agilisys is a Microsoft preferred partner because you're a member of our Content Services Partner Program. And that is something that our customers can learn more about at aka.ms/content services program, where you can discover the partners in the program like Agilisys and read some of the case studies that you've been able to share with us, including City of London, which we'll get to in a minute. What does it mean to Agilisys to be part of the program? What are some of the things that you get to learn about beyond even Project Cortex that help you deliver more performant solutions for our customers?
I think for me, we've been part of the Content Services Partner Program for just over a year now. And it's been an absolute pleasure, to work with Chris and the wider team and to get that visibility of some of the stuff that was coming down the Microsoft roadmap, which meant that when we were actually delivering solutions for our customers, we were able to do that with the knowledge in the back of our mind. We didn't implement something that was potentially going to be, not fit for purpose or superseded with some of the new changes that were coming. And I think it's just been a really great forum for us to create a wider network and, to give us that access to the team, really, which has been fantastic.
One thing I wanted to ask that we learned about Agilisys through the program is your engagement with City of London. We actually have 2 customer stories from them that you've shared with us because you've been on a longer-term modernization journey about getting to the cloud and moving them into Teams. And if I'm going to read a quote from Sam Collins, who is the head of change and enablement, he said, "I'm very pleased with the deployment of Teams via the provisioning tool, which has provided both a great user experience and is an excellent example of what can be achieved using the Office 365 toolkit." And for our audience in North America, very pleased would translate as, "Dude, totally stoked. Single best thing ever."
Rad, man.
So obviously that's been a highly successful engagement. How did you come to be connected with the City of London, who hopefully our audience has heard of before? And, what's that journey been like?
So Agilisys have been working for the City of London Corporation since 2013, I believe, which is a few years before my time. But if we go back a few years to the start of that contract, this was a partnership to provide a full managed outsourced service to the corporation. So that obviously included their SharePoint on-premise environment. And we had a small team who kind of looked after, their SharePoint farm and provided kind of supports and new sites and things like that. And then about 3 years ago, we started one of our big transformation programs with the City of London. And that included all of the stuff that I talked about earlier. So, a full desktop upgrade, network improvements, Active Directory cleansing, moving everything wholesale into Office 365. And when we did that initial migration, there were several components that we moved from their SharePoint farm, which included some complex EDRMS systems that integrated into various third-party solutions. They had an intranet, which was a really interesting story in itself because, their intranet had about 4,500 pages of content on it, and we had to take them through quite a long information architecture design process to actually get them to modernize that. We actually moved them to a communication site for their intranet when that had first come out. So they're really innovative and, they've always got the desire to kind of be leading with technology. So they're a really great customer for us to work with. And then we migrated all of their team sites as well and, got them working in SharePoint Online and with OneDrive for Business. And at the time that this was finished, Microsoft Teams wasn't quite there yet. So as we've continued working with them and supporting them, we followed our initial transformation work then with Microsoft Teams deployment. which included, an automated provisioning process so they could control the sprawl of teams. And actually, we're going through some additional changes with them at the moment. So we're actually helping them implement control guest access for their tenant as well. Luke, do you want to talk about some of the other things that we've done with the City of London as well?
Oh, gosh, yeah. So, the cool thing I find is we often get these guys on M365, and then we get to do some interesting stuff with the technology is what I would say. So the really nice thing is City of London have, probably, maybe 4,000 odd users that basically are not part of the City of London officially, but they're called institutional departments. So it's kind of like an affiliate as such. And we basically used Azure B2B at the time that it first was around to basically invite those 4,000 users on into the whole intranet, so in the City of London intranet, I should say, and basically get them in using Azure B2B. On top of that, we've also done, and these are some of the cool ones that I really like, is that we recently rolled out, and it took some time, but we got Azure AD application proxy in place. So that's another cool freebie that you guys throw in as part of using Azure AD. I don't think a huge number of people use it, but it's really great for publishing kind of internal apps externally. So again, we use that for some of the institutional departments. After that, we've also rolled out the AIP, so Azure Information Protection and Sensitivity labels. And that helps beta kind of the regulatory and compliance one. So they really quite like that as well.
So we've heard from you all the things that City of London is doing with Microsoft 365, and it really helps, get started and be stable. But if you go to the next customer, and I'll let you all draw the straw on who answers this first one, how do you describe Microsoft 365 to a new customer?
So typically the way I would say it is kind of it's Microsoft's offering of their productivity suite in the cloud is typically how I approach it. And that's Office 365. But when you talk about M365, we're also throwing in the client desktop and basically that whole piece around that as well. And that's kind of the kind of simple answer I would say to try to sell it or dumb it down.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
So keeping score, we have 3 questions, 3 guests. So second question. So we're down to Ruben and Zoe. What was the most recent book or movie that you read or saw and would recommend?
I'm a bit of a fantasy geek, to be honest. And I've actually just finished a reread of the Wheel of Time series in anticipation of the new Amazon show that's in production at the moment. And if there are any fantasy fans out there, I'd absolutely recommend it to anybody.
Very nice, very nice. We will send a SharePoint ferry your way very soon. So, Ruben, you get the last question. And a lot of it is just this notion of change management, how you get informed before you actually talk to your customers. Where do you go to keep track and catch up with all of the Microsoft news? What are your techniques?
So there are a variety of them. One of the good techniques is that you invited me to a summit recently, which really helped. So I got to speak to some of your developers and so forth, and Chris and the teams. So you've been telling us because of this partnership we have. And of course, there are other areas that I actually do use Microsoft Voice. So where everyone asks your teams to develop new features and so on, and you can see which ones are bubbling to the top. And of course, your roadmap is actually very good these days. I'm quite impressed with it.
I think a lot of people, specifically around user voice, don't realize that those are public stated comments. People vote them up and certainly value them, but that the engineering teams actually look at them constantly, week on week, and also mark whether they're thinking about it, it's on their backlog, actively engaged, or what we hope, delivered. So that's a great one, user voice.
So I would love to also get a sense for getting more information, not just about Microsoft, but about Agilisys. Where can our audience go to learn more about Agilisys and to stay connected with each of you?
So you can go to our website, which is www.agilisys.co.uk. We also have a presence on LinkedIn and Twitter and a really active social media team. And all 3 of us are also on LinkedIn as well.
Any big local events or regional events or even at the broad scale worldwide, anything in the coming weeks or months that people should, if they want to meet you and connect one-on-one, any events that they should attend?
We will absolutely be at the Microsoft Ignite London, and we're really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up here and move into the closing of the show. We certainly thank you for your time. Thank you for your partnership. I know working with Chris and team, you're going to get that inside baseball. I had to sneak in my one sports reference. But thank you all for what you do every day with your customers, supporting Microsoft, and let us know if there's anything that we could do going forward.
Thank you very much for having us on the show.
Great to have you. Hope you can stick around for our frequently asked questions.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us.
Marvelous. Thank you.
Up next on the Intrazone, frequently asked questions. This is a chance for our panel to review questions that they've been hearing from customers and from our ecosystem that they want to share those answers with the audience so you don't have to ask them again. Conveniently delivered here on the IntraZone. Mark, what's a question that you've been hearing a lot out there?
This one is from an announcement that we made at Ignite. It's all about the 100 gig file upload. And the question that I've been getting a lot, and it's been a big question because 100 gigs is big, is does this apply to both OneDrive and SharePoint? I think a lot of people thought it was a OneDrive announcement because, it sort of came through that way.
Sure.
But it absolutely applies to anywhere you upload a file into Microsoft 365. Primarily, that's OneDrive, SharePoint, and of course, Microsoft Teams. The other thing that I like to add just to the answer is it also applies to sync. So, of course, you'll be able to sync 100 gig files, and that differential sync will, of course, help you save on resyncing that. You'll just be syncing the deltas off of those large files. And it plays into migration, specifically from an API perspective, but any migration scenario, whether you use our tool, our partner tooling, or you just sort of do a drag and drop, it will support the 100 gig file upload into Microsoft 365 across a lot of our applications, but primarily think of it as it's a yes answer.
Great. Thanks. Zoe, what's a question that you've been hearing lately that you'd like to share in frequently asked questions?
A question that I get asked commonly is how secure is Office 365 or Microsoft 365?
And what's the answer?
Well, very, very secure. I think that, obviously the cloud has come on such a long way since its early days. And, we're seeing, like governments and police forces move wholesale into Microsoft 365 and Azure. So, the security and all of the, credentials are absolutely there. But we do still come across fear in our customers, which we have to work with them to help them overcome.
Very nice. Luke, what is a frequently asked question that you get? And of course, the answer that you provide.
Sure. So my frequently asked question is probably, where should I store my files in Office 365 is probably the key one that we usually have. So I think my answer would be the following. I think if it's personal and you're working on it, typically like a My Document scenario from the old days, we would probably put it in your OneDrive. But if it's a collaborative working scenario, we would always lead with Microsoft Teams at the moment.
I think it's a great answer. A lot of it is, if you know who needs to access it, now and into the future, define who needs to access it, and that will help you dictate where, right?
So, Ruben, what's a question you've been getting lately?
Probably one of the frequent questions is, where does my intranet fit in with Teams? And the answer to that is essentially that you can actually have an organization-wide team which has some intranet functionality attached to it in several ways. And there are some other options. There's the new home sites. And there's the use of hub sites where you can have mini intranets.
Yeah, I think you are helping people organize getting to the cloud once they're there. It also sounds like you're helping them organize, in their day-to-day, whether it's individuals through Microsoft Teams or organization-wide through the hub sites and of course, coming SharePoint home sites very soon.
Yes, that's it.
We are very excited about the home sites, to be honest. I think we're all eagerly checking every day.
Well, I think we've already got our first customer lined up for them, so I'm constantly checking to see when it's going to land.
Excellent. We will pass that along to our peers who are diligently getting it ready to roll out. Cool. Chris, what is your frequently asked question?
Oddly enough, my frequently asked question is, how often do you go to London? And of course, I will be there for Ignite the Tour in London. I've been to London, I think it's closing in on 90 times. Several visits ago, I actually was able to sit down with Agilisys out near the O2 Center. It's always great to visit our friends and partners in the UK, and I look forward to more trips in the future.
All right. Great FAQs, everyone. Thank you, Agilisys, for your mind share on what you have, questions coming at you, and of course, your answers. And Chris as well. Let's move on to upcoming events.
Up next on the IntraZone, upcoming events. If there's an event going out there in the community, we want to share that with you. Mark, what are some of the events that we know are coming up around the world?
Yeah, we are at the tail end of 2019. We've certainly passed Ignite. There's a lot of content on demand. We've passed ESPC. It was a great event in Prague. Next up is SharePoint Fest Chicago. That's December 9th through the 13th, and you can find all that you want about SharePoint Fest Chicago at sharepointfest.com/Chicago. But I think before we leave, you're actually planning to go, and maybe you can give us your 2 cents on what you think the fest is going to bring in Chicago.
Well, I think my session yesterday was amazing. Like, I did not expect fireworks we're pre-recording this. But if you're listening to this right now, it's December 10th. Tomorrow morning, Naomi Moneypenny will be delivering the keynote. I'll be there to do a session on Project Cortex. And it's a great chance for us to gather in a wonderful city during the holidays with hundreds of our partners and customers. It's already a super strong event, and we're proud to be able to be engaged there.
Excellent. Well, I hope you have and are having a great SP Fest Chicago. So let's move on and talk about Microsoft Ignite, the tour. It certainly has already kicked off with Paris and now bleeding into the end of 2019 and lots more in 2020. But let's cover really quickly some of the upcoming cities. Obviously, with the timing of the podcast, right now in Beijing, December 10th through the 11th is certainly happening. Always great. Just to give you a quick recap, Microsoft Ignite, the tour, brings all of the Ignite content to regionally distributed and presented sessions with both Microsoft employees and MVPs. And certainly there's a list of all 30 cities in 2019 and 2020. And we wanted to list out the couple that are coming really soon. So Beijing, next up.
Sao Paulo, December 12th to 13th.
Then we have Toronto, January 8th through the 9th. That's in 2020, first ones.
I wisely signed up to be in Canada during January.
Bring your snowshoes. Then we move on to Shenzhen, January 13th through the 14th in China. And last, but certainly not least, in the ones that we'll mention in this particular episode,
London, coming up January 16th to 17th. London promises to be an especially large event. We're expecting nearly 10,000 people to come out. As you heard earlier, Agilisys will be there to promote and support everything that we're doing. And I'll be there doing a session on content management in Microsoft 365.
We also have an article, Microsoft Events, The Year Ahead 2020, by Bob Bejan, who is our CVP of Microsoft Events. It has a lot of big and small events throughout the year 2020 that you can plan for and, of course, look forward to. Thank you to our guests from Agilisys, Zoe Wilson, Luke Evans, and Ruben Hugo.
Check out our show page for links to all of what we discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone. And if you're interested in other shows by Microsoft, and why wouldn't you be, check out aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts.
Send us your questions or feedback for the SharePoint engineering and product teams. You can email us at theintrozone@microsoft.com or on Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000.
Tell all your friends and colleagues about the show and share that SharePoint love. Subscribe at the local holiday punch bowl or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks again for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. You've been listening to The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 partner-powered intelligent intranet.